beat up the stress inducers of the brain, and work to raise awareness about mental health problems. We will be covering various topics like mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, mood disorders, neurodevelopmental disorders like autism. We will also be applying psychology to real life, such as current affairs, like the pandemic or like the BLM movement. We will also be exploring the relationship that we have with people around us, such as our friends and family and other loved ones, as well as the relationship we have with ourselves and how we talk to ourselves. We will also be bringing in professionals as third-person guests. We don't have a guest with us today, but we will have them in future episodes. The main goal of this podcast is to reduce the stigma around mental health issues in Pakistan. Coming to our topic of today, it is estimated that around 350,000 individuals in Pakistan have autism. And you should note, these are only the individuals that have the resources available and the awareness available that has gotten them diagnosed. So the actual number will be much more. We decided to start with autism today in light of a recent bullying incident, which Kazi will be talking about later. Now, what is autism? According to the American Psychiatric Society, or the APA, autism, now referred to as the autistic spectrum disorder, is a neurodevelopmental disorder. This means it has to do with non-typical features of the nervous system and the brain. It is characterized by a persistent difficulty in communication and social interaction, and by a repetitive pattern of interests, behaviors, or activities. Kazi, can you elaborate on these broad categories of symptoms?
I mean, does our YouTube name sound like a rock album from the 1960s? Yes. Are we both qualified? No. Have we ever done this? No. Can either of us record or edit? No. But are we going to try? Yes. We'll do our research according to 3 websites, and we also have professionals on the side who are helping us. So we have somewhat credible advice to give.
Somewhat.
On a scale of 1 to 10, we're a solid 6.285. Solid. 6.3 is a stretch. I mean, going into this topic, we all know why we're going into this topic. There was a huge bullying case going on with the kid, and I just want to, and in regards to that, me and Gule just want to say that it's something that isn't recognized in Pakistan a lot, and it's hard for us, even as kids or as adults, to understand how to interact with someone who might lack barriers in their mind. So when we're talking to someone like that, when they're talking to us and they say something that's offensive, we automatically go on the defensive. Even if we know that they are someone who suffers with autism, they can say something that's very, very triggering to anyone. Not intentionally, of course. That it isn't their intent to hurt anyone. It is their intent to just speak to someone and try to socialize with someone. But they don't have the same wiring in their brains that we do. They socialize with people differently. Okay, so when we're talking about the symptoms of autism, the definition of autism has changed as we've progressed through the research. Autism before 2013 was diagnosed as multiple disorders. So you had Asperger's syndrome, and you had something on the other side called low functioning autism or high functioning autism. Now we have a spectrum. So we put it under a spectrum. It's an autism spectrum where we place people under that spectrum based on what their symptoms are. So previously, someone who would have a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, let's say, they would now be put under a 1 on the autism spectrum. What we need to understand about autism is that autism is a very, very complex disorder. We don't understand the causes of autism that well, and we also don't understand how those things come out and what those things look like at what age, and can those things change as you get older. Another thing we have to know is that different people suffering from autism can show completely different traits. There are over 200 genes that are involved with autism, that are involved with the brain, that can change how you interact with people. There's a very wide array of things that can happen when you're suffering with autism. Okay, so one of the defining symptoms of autism is difficulties in communication and social interaction. So what this means is that these people don't know how to socialize with people appropriately, and they also don't know how to react to someone else socializing with them in an appropriate way. This can mean a number of different things. It can be problems in understanding other people's feelings. So when we see someone's face is upset, they don't recognize that their face is upset. When someone is frowning, they could recognize that as, oh, they're happy. The things in their brain to recognize what a face looks like when someone is unhappy do not work properly. So they are in a space where if you're upset, they're thinking that, oh, you're happy from what I'm saying, so I should say this thing more. Let's talk about other symptoms. We have a lack of joint attention, and we have different or uncommon social approach. What they're saying here is that when you have autism, you don't necessarily know how to make friends, and that's a very difficult part of being someone who has autism. Social anxiety is something different. Social anxiety isn't the same thing as autism. Someone with social anxiety saying, "Oh, I understand where you're coming from. I have social anxiety. I can't talk to people." That's a valid experience, of course, but it's slightly inflammatory to say, "Okay, I have the same experience because I too have anxiety when I'm going through to talk to people." When you're talking about someone with autism, they don't understand social structure. Some people with autism, obviously, there are a lot of symptoms of autism. Okay, let's look at some of the symptoms that doctors and mental health practitioners use to identify that someone has autism. This is extremely difficult to do, especially in a setting like Pakistan, where if someone has autism, they may be classified as having another mental disorder. So if you have trouble with forming words, you may be classified as being dyslexic instead of being autistic. Let's look at some of the ways that we do know that autism can be identified with these techniques. These techniques are not perfect, but they have worked enough that we can be sure that they are at least usable. First is poor eye contact. So one of the ways that they identify at a very young age, so babies, if they have autism, is they put them in this big machine and they test where they're looking. So they're trying to see if the baby can look at a person's eyes. So if they can look at their mother's eyes. Usually, people with autism, when they're babies, they look at their eyes while they're speaking or anyone is speaking. Babies with autism, though, they don't look at a person's eyes. They look around the person. They look at their nose. They look around. This is usually a trait that mental health practitioners use when they're looking for autism. And then similarly, no social smile, lack of facial expression, non-verbal communication, difficulty integrating verbal and non-verbal. So this would be at an older age. That was at a very young age. And then we're looking at an older age where a person doesn't communicate. It's been really long. The toddler is getting older and older and he hasn't started speaking. There is a reason for concern. I've heard that parents don't get concerned when their kids speak at all and they just let it keep going and they're like, oh, it'll just develop. At a point, you should start getting concerned that your child isn't speaking because that isn't normal. And especially when the child starts speaking, he starts speaking in a way that's either not, you can't understand what he's trying to say, or if he's at an older age and he can't form sentences properly, reading is a different criteria. Forming sentences is a very important part. There are some people who have autism who can't speak at all, they just can't form words in their mind. They have to use different systems. So they use systems like deaf people use. They use pictures and they use braille and stuff like that. Let's look at developing and maintaining relationships as a symptom. These people have a lot of trouble developing and maintaining relationships. So first, starting off a relationship, any kind of relationship, a friendship, romantic, any kind of relationship, that's difficult for them already because of their mental health and because of the way they think socializing with someone is appropriate. They have difficulty adjusting to behavior to suit different situations. So they act the same in every single situation. And that can be extremely troubling, especially in our society. So we can have someone speaking to their grandfather and their friend in the same way. And that, of course, you can understand why it can be troubling for everyone involved in that situation. And it can be extremely troubling for the child who just simply doesn't understand what's going on. Another category that mental health professionals use to identify autism is repetitive patterns of behavior. So stereotype or repetitive speech, motor movements, or use of objects. What this basically means is that they repeat the same words in every single scenario, not intentionally, of course. They just don't have an understanding of what is appropriate in what scenario. And they also have excessive adherence to routines and repetition. So they get up every day, they do the same thing every day. If you change anything in that pattern, they get very, very finicky. They start getting uncomfortable if you change anything in their routine. They have this in similar with people with ADHD. So a lot of people with autism actually are diagnosed with ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. I knew it. I knew it halfway. I mean, I knew it halfway. We did our research. Hello, excuse me. They have a lot of things in common, and they are diagnosed in the same way, but they can also be misdiagnosed where you aren't looking at the other things in autism. ADHD isn't a part of autism; it is a separate diagnosis. It just happens to be that both of them intersect in these things. Okay, so they also have hyperreactivity to sensory input. So let's say they feel pain, let's say they are hurt, let's say they feel hot, so they'll start banging their head into the wall. Let's say that there's a fire drill at school, they'll start biting their knuckles, they'll start hitting someone. Not intentionally, of course, again. It's that their brain, we have the fight and flight response in our brain, and that basically is telling us what to do in what situation. And in their brains, it's hyperactive. So when anything is going on, their brain is like full on fight mode. They're gonna whack someone. They're gonna kill someone if they have to get out of somewhere. Not intentionally, of course. It's just that their brain is wired in a way where they don't know how to react appropriately to the situation. So if there was a fire drill going on, they wouldn't form in a line to get out orderly out of a building. They would whack everyone out of the way to get out of the building because they're panicking and they don't know how to control that panic. And in their brain, they have certain chemicals that are going haywire. So they have a lot of things going on in their brain all the time, which makes them hyperactive, which can make them aggressive, depending on the person, obviously. This depends on the person. A person could also go in a mode where they just faint. Anything happening, they could just faint. They could just lie down on the floor and they're like, we don't want to get up, don't move us. It depends on the person. Again, autism is a very complicated disorder, and we'll get into what to do based on each scenario. Let's talk about the causes of autism. Now, we don't know much about the causes of autism, honestly, and it's something that parents get uncomfortable about as well. As a parent with someone with autism, mothers can think that they made a mistake during their pregnancy that increased the likelihood of autism. There is a genetic basis of autism. It has been proven that there's a genetic basis for autism. But what's interesting is that research done shows that even if you are identical twins, so identical twins share 100% of the DNA, there is a 77% chance that both of them have autism. So that's interesting. Why isn't it 100%? So there isn't an entirely genetic basis for autism. Similarly, if two siblings have a 20% chance, so normal siblings, brother, sister, sister, brother, 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 sister, sister, they have a 20% chance of having autism. So that's a significant chance between brothers. They're not sharing the same amount of DNA as identical twins or what's the other twins? Oh my god, what's the other twins?
I zoned out I literally had it on the tip of my tongue.
What's the other twins?
Identical twins and...
There's like identical twins which like come out at the same time. And there's like the...
types of twins.
There's like the other one.
Not searching this up right now. We did our research.
Oh, we are research kings and queens here.
Yes, we remember the word. We're just stalling. Fraternal twins.
Fraternal twins. I was about to say paternal twins, and I was like, this don't sound right. Anyway, fraternal twins, yes, have a 33% chance of both of them having autism, which is again interesting because why don't we see 100% in identical twins? So there are obviously some environmental factors that are involved in them. We basically know nothing. We know absolutely nothing when it comes to the environmental factors. The other factors involving autism, there's not a lot we know. We know that some medicines increase the chance of autism. So you have one medicine that's used in the treatment of schizophrenia, and we know that has an effect in increasing the chances of autism. Okay, we need to get this out of the way too. Vaccines have no effect on autism. It's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. You'll find middle-aged white women on Facebook saying, the autism caused the... It's not happening. It's just not happening. It's not happening. Autism has no connection with vaccines, any kind of vaccines. That's just false. It is entirely false. There was one research paper conducted in God knows when, and that research paper it was removed from the scientific journal, and that doctor was revoked of his license. There is no scientific basis of vaccines causing autism. that idea is wrong, and it's honestly, it has, even when you think of what vaccines are, it has no connection with what autism is. Even if we look at autism as a genetic disorder, or even if we look autism as something that is purely something that is based on what is injected into your body or based on external stimuli. So just to get that out of the way, no, vaccines do not cause autism. They absolutely do not cause autism, any kind of vaccine.
Okay, moving on. We will now talk about the resources available in Pakistan for people with autism. Now, these resources are limited, but over the years, recently, there have been more institutions that are providing both educational and vocational facilities for people with autism, where they help you learn and they help you adjust to your environment according to the way a person with autism has their brain wired. So, like, to help them with social interactions, as Kazi mentioned before, with the symptoms, they have trouble communicating or they have trouble understanding facial expressions. So, there is training for all of that. There are different therapies for all of that. First, awareness, though. There's a lack of awareness, which is part of the reason why there's a lack of resources. There was a study conducted which observed mothers of autistic children in Karachi, and majority of them said that they had never heard of the word autism before their child was diagnosed. And quite a few of them said that their doctors were not even aware of the disorder, and they actually had to go on Google and research the symptoms themselves and find the possibilities and suggest it to their doctor. And they also mentioned that they learned more about the symptoms of autism from Google or from first-hand experience with their kids rather than from the doctors themselves, because the doctors either didn't have that information or provided the wrong information. And that's the main problem. So now there is one of the most I think reliable sources that I found when I was researching that had like the most consistent and the best reviews as well was the Autism Resource Center. They have branches set up in Lahore, Islamabad, and Rawalpindi. It was founded in around 2010, and they provide different therapies. They provide occupational therapy, which helps integrate like older people with autism. It helps integrate them into the workforce. And they have educational facilities for the kids. They provide ABA therapy, which is applied behavior analysis, which is basically supposed to encourage, like, for example, a child with autism, if you tell them to share a toy with their fellow peer, they might either not respond to what you're saying or they might not understand what you want them to do. Kazi mentioned before, a symptom of autism is a difficulty integrating verbal and nonverbal communication. What that means is, suppose I am telling, as a teacher, I am telling a student to write down what I'm writing on the board, and I can start writing on the board. So the nonverbal is me writing on the board, and the verbal is me telling them to. So a person with autism might not necessarily link the two together, and might not know that that's what I mean by copying from the board. They might not associate those two actions together. So ABA therapy is basically to observe the behaviors that they have difficulty with and help integrate them, so that they can function and have a better quality of life. So ARC has many other therapies. A speech therapy is also there, and there's play therapy. Parents work with the kids so that they can all understand the disorder better. And it's a small setup in Islamabad, but there's a bigger setup. The biggest setup is in Lahore. I will provide the contact details in the description below. And even I checked their website, and even during quarantine, they're providing online consultation for the parents and the students. They're providing online ABA sessions and online ABA therapy, and they are continuously holding sessions and they hold festivals and events for their kids so that they can experience things as normally as possible, and they try their best to raise awareness. Another resource that I found in my research was the Oasis School for Autism in Lahore, and this was the first fully equipped school for children with autism. They have high standard of education, and they have all the relevant therapies just like ARC. They follow two main methods, you can say. There's the SCIRTS which is basically there's the skirts and the tiak or the teach. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but both of these techniques are activity based, and they're also similar to ABA therapy in the sense that they observe the behaviors and they help you integrate so that they can understand emotions and like their own emotions and everyone else's emotions normally. I would like to caution when you look into this particular resource though, because I found mixed reviews for Oasis. Some give really, really, really positive reviews, and then there is controversy around it, so caution. We haven't visited any of these resources personally, but I have done extensive research as much as I could. So please do your own research as well when you look into these and see if whichever best fits you, if you think that you have autism or if you think someone you know does. So these are really helpful. These resources have helped quite a few people. And the third resource that I found is the Bridge School in Banigala. Its main aim is basically to help with the transition from to help children with autism transition into mainstream education. So, like I said, because of the way their brains are wired, it's harder to communicate with kids, and it's harder to like integrate verbal and nonverbal communication, to understand common commands that the rest of us can. And so the Bridge School's purpose is to help them function normally first. And they use resources like, there's this resource called the AAC, which is basically used, like, since they can't really, some of them can't express their emotions, so they have like this system, this screen, which will display certain pictures or certain words. And it will have a phrase on the top such as, right now I feel ... and then there will be a table of pictures. And they will click one of the pictures to show how they feel, because they don't have the same ability to express themselves or to form the words in some cases. So the Bridge School is actually divided into two sections. There's the preschool section, and then there's the regular school section. And they also teach sign language, and they teach how to interpret body language, and they have different modes of education such as the AAC and everything. And their staff is highly trained in all of these in special education. And they also provide the necessary therapies like ABA therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. And it's basically just to ease their transition so that they can, so that their students can slowly go into mainstream education without too much difficulty. Speaking of school, bullies. So we mentioned before.
Just a smooth transition by Gule there, like butter.
I know.
That's what transitions are.
This is why we're doing the podcast. We invented podcasts and smooth transitions. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so bullies. We referenced the bullying incident that inspired this episode earlier, which I will be getting into. First, I just want to start off with a bully in general. So a bully can be anyone. There is the stereotype of this aggressive male who's the typical bully that beats up people in school hallways, but honestly, a bully can be anybody. It doesn't matter what your gender is, it doesn't matter what your age is. You can be a bully as a child, you can be a bully as an adult. It doesn't matter.
I think another thing there is too, even if you're not a bully right now, it's a lot about what kind of people you're hanging out with. So there are a lot of people who, once they're hanging out with toxic people or they hang out in toxic groups, they start taking up those things as their own belief systems. So if you're in a group, or if you're in a system which, for example, has very conservative belief systems, you're going to start applying those conservative belief systems into your joke systems. You're going to start taking more things as jokes, not understanding what the line between a joke and bullying is. Now that's a thing that's very relevant in school. What the line is between making fun of someone and what you think is a joke. You can very clearly, if you're looking at someone's face, you can tell if they're uncomfortable. And I can for sure say that a lot of people listening to this podcast have been those people and have been bullies. And there are a lot of people in Head Start who treat people very disrespectfully. And not just Head Start, not from the school we're from. Every single school, every single workplace, every single system, not just in Pakistan, everywhere. If you look at a person's face and they seem uncomfortable and you continue with the situation saying, oh, lighten up, it's just a joke. I mean, first of all, it's not your place to tell someone.
You can't invalidate their feelings. If they're not taking it as a joke, then let it slide.
Let it slide. It's okay. You you can say, first of all, you can say sorry. There's nothing wrong in saying sorry. You made a joke that is offensive and is making someone uncomfortable. Just stop. You don't need to defend it.
That might not have been your intention, but once you realize that is what's happening, just pass it on. Just say, apologize, and talk about something else.
Also, what annoys me, someone is saying that joke, I don't like that joke, that joke is triggering to me. You're trying to explain why the joke is okay. I don't understand why you can't just stop. I understand people think and view different things as funny, but when you're having a conversation with someone, you need to respect what they are willing to listen to. I'll give you an example. If someone is on their, let's say, Instagram page, that is their space. You can put almost anything you want on your space. If I don't like what you're saying, I can unfollow you. If you're in a chat group or you're talking to someone in real life and you say something to them that's offensive, that is not your space. Both of you share that space and you need to respect that both of you are in that space. You do not mutually own that. You do not exclusively own that space. You need to respect a person if they're saying, I don't like how you're speaking with me. If you're speaking like that in a space that you exclusively own, like if you have a page or you have a blog, I'm not saying that what you can say is wrong. Anyone can say something wrong. But I'm saying is that is your space and you can say those things in your space. But if you're making someone uncomfortable in a space that both of you share, I think that's disrespectful.
Exactly. I mean, how uncomfortable are you going to make people just for the sake of, oh, I have a certain sense of humor and you just don't get it. It's not, you can't invalidate someone's feelings. If it's triggering for them, then it's just a fact that it's triggering for them. It's just a fact that it is making them upset. That's how emotions work. You can't just be like, oh, but it's funny to me. Why are you taking it so seriously? They can't just switch that off. That's not how it works. So just let it slide, apologize, and talk about something else. And it's hard enough in a regular setting where bullies are there. It can be in a workplace, it can be in school, like Kazi said. But statistics have shown that someone with autism is much more likely, like 63% more likely, to be bullied. And this is because there's a lack of awareness. Again, there's a lack of understanding of the symptoms. Some people might not have a diagnosis, and their behavior might just seem unusual to neurotypical. And that's understandable if it seems unusual to you, but that's not a reason to bully someone just because they're different. And, okay, so the incident that we mentioned earlier, the situation, according to our research, so the facts aren't exactly clear, but according to our research, what happened was that an autistic individual with autism, said a few triggering things to appear. And, of course, she reacted. He didn't say it intentionally because, again, people with autism have a different wiring. They do not understand the effect that they have on certain people.
Also, he said these things allegedly. We're not sure if he said these things. The person involved on that side are saying that those screenshots were fake.
Yeah.
We don't know if they were fake. We're not going to act like they were fake or they weren't fake. We're just going to tell you what is the appropriate response in case they were fake and in case they weren't fake.
Yeah.
Which, either case, they were fake, they weren't fake, it doesn't matter. You don't have the right to talk to someone in that way.
Yeah.
And I understand how complicated the situation is, not even if we're looking just at that situation. Let's look at any kind of situation where an autistic person says something very, very, very inflammatory towards you. Any person would react negatively.
Of course.
Anyone would.
You'll get angry, of course you'll get upset.
Especially if you don't know that person is autistic.
And even if you know that they're autistic, you can't help your feelings. They will say something, they won't realize the effect that they're having, but the effect will still happen to you.
See, me and Gule both aren't trying to antagonize autistic people here.
Yeah, of course
the autistic person is not the bully in this case.
Yeah.
You can only be a bully if you are intentionally trying to hurt someone. But they are not trying to intentionally do something to anyone because they do not think in the same way that we do. And I do recognize that if someone says something extremely inflammatory towards you, You do have a right to be upset. You do. It can be
And of
extremely
course you
triggering.
will react.
My point is, see, now this is it's extremely complicated, and
Yeah.
there is no answer you can find online. There's no answer a therapist can give you, which is the most appropriate response. The most important takeaway from here is what the people were doing to Mohit. That is wrong. That is just, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no debate about
Yeah.
it. That's plain out wrong. The things they were saying to him was absolutely disgusting. Plain out wrong. They do not. Another thing I want to bring up is, okay, even if they did say those things, those people don't deserve death threats.
Yeah.
Giving death threats to someone isn't an appropriate response, even if someone has said something to someone like that. And they said very, very they said horrible things. They said disgusting things.
Yeah.
But they don't deserve to get death threats. Death threats aren't an appropriate response to that.
And they're not going to solve anything.
Exactly. You aren't bringing up the conversation. You
aren't educating the people who don't understand what they did.
Even if they are not willing to accept you trying to educate them, even if you are trying to say, oh, well, he's autistic and autistic symptoms are XYZ, this is this. Even if they reject those things and try to defend their statements, the value of the point is not to give them death threats, because then you're stooping to the same level.
Exactly.
Because you don't want to do that and then seem like you're still antagonizing the person with autism, because then you're attaching the person with autism. You're saying, okay, oh, it is possible that he has said, okay, it's okay to send death threats, which is not the message he sent. There's no
indication of that. There's no intention like that.
I don't think death threats are warranted for anything, literally anything. No matter what a crime is, there's no death threats warranted. You let the legal system do its procedures. You can think about something, of course, and you can go, oh, this person has done something disgusting. I vehemently disagree with what you're doing. I disagree very, very wholeheartedly. You can distance yourself from that person. I think you can even send that message to a person that what you've done is absolutely terrible and wrong, and I think you should reflect on your actions. But I don't think sending a death threat is appropriate to anyone. I mean, literally
for anything.
Anything.
It doesn't solve. It just doesn't solve anything. It doesn't do anything.
It just literally doesn't do anything, and it's okay to feel upset.
Yeah.
I know where the death threats are coming from. They're coming from a place of upset. People. I don't think most people genuinely want to hurt those people. I think it's coming from a place. Oh, this kid is getting bullied, but it's not his fault because he's getting bullied. Everyone's upset. Me and Gule are upset that he got bullied. He didn't deserve that, obviously.
Yeah.
But death threats aren't an appropriate response. You need to check your emotions, and you need to check how you're speaking to people. Yeah. You don't want to say that to anyone. I don't think it's appropriate for any kind of circumstance.
Yeah. What is the message you're trying to send? If you want to make them understand their actions, then you have to speak to them. You need to send messages, but death threats aren't going to solve everything. It's just going to scare them. It'll give the wrong impression. It'll associate the wrong things with the whole situation. The point is, the bullying was wrong, whether he said those things or not. Even if he did, the bullying was wrong. Ganging up on him was wrong. They should have, I understand that he said some pretty disturbing things, and it should have been told to the proper authorities. It should have been told to the adults that they could have dealt with the situation properly. And I'm not sure if they found out if he's autistic or not. But if you, in another situation, if you find out that a person who said these kind of things to you is autistic, and you educate yourself on the symptoms, you should try to at least make them aware of the fact that you didn't know, and now you do know, and you understand that they didn't mean to say those things to you. But of course, again, you don't have to force yourself into a friendship that you don't want. If you can't handle what they're saying, and if you can't make them understand how you feel about what they're saying, then of course you don't have to stay in that relationship. You don't have to stay in that friendship. But bullying is wrong. You can be neutral. You can remove yourself from the situation, but don't antagonize. Don't bully. Don't make the situation worse. Don't give death threats. Punchline.
I mean, also, even if he didn't have autism and he had a neurotypical mindset,
bullying is still wrong.
It's wrong. It's still wrong. I mean, me and Gule have read those screenshots. We've seen some of the things that they said to him, and that's wrong for any case.
It's just gross.
It's just gross. And even no matter what someone has said to you, and again, coming back to death threats is an extreme version of that. But contacting someone, telling them absolutely horrible things, it's not gonna change anything. It's just not gonna change anything. All you're doing is
maybe you'll make them feel really bad, but you won't make them feel worse about what they did. They're gonna go on the defensive if you react like this.
Also, we've seen how bullies react when they go on the defensive.
Yeah.
When they go on the defensive, they are doing this bullying.
Exactly.
All you're doing by sending them death threats is making them more likely
defensive.
to bully more.
Exactly.
Because they start bullying when they get defensive.
Yeah.
So when you send messages, okay, and I'm not saying you can't send messages to this person. An appropriate message here would be, I'm extremely hurt by your actions and you should really reflect on them. Maybe send them some links on autism websites.
Yeah.
Maybe sending them our podcast, maybe. Talking to them about what the appropriate responses are. Okay. And another thing, let's talk about what is an appropriate apology in this case. That if the people involved want to apologize later, is the apology acceptable? First of all, it's not for me or Gulay to accept their apology. It's for the person.
It's for the person involved.
It's for the person involved, and it's for the autistic community to decide in themselves whether they accept or do not accept someone's apology. It is not our place to say, oh, this person has a more acceptable apology, this person doesn't have an acceptable apology, we're still going to be mad at this person, we're not going to be mad at this person. That's not our place.
Yeah.
That's the place of the people involved. Who
and the community involved.
And the community involved. And both of them, and talking to each other, if they are open to a conversation. I understand that some of the people involved in this are still not apologizing and are still on the defensive and saying they did nothing wrong and they did everything they did was in their right. Honestly, I think the correct response in this case would to be get legal action involved.
Yeah.
If someone is justifying that kind of behavior and isn't taking responsibility for acting like someone, I think it's appropriate to get legal action involved. Yeah. Legal action involved for multiple different reasons. First of all, you're increasing advocacy that, first of all, people like this do exist no matter how progressive you are. People like this do exist who will not apologize no matter what you tell them or what you do. They're just not going to apologize. And second of all, if that causes you stress or if that causes you mental health, that person should be in charge of paying for your mental health services. I think that person should be. Fair. I think that person should be sued and they should be responsible for paying for his therapy. Yeah. I think they should be responsible. Yeah. And what is the appropriate response? We talked about it a little bit pehle. Lekin I think the appropriate response here is, and I know saying ke talk to their parents, talk to the teachers. I know ke sometimes teachers and parents don't react in an appropriate way. Teachers and parents do not react in an appropriate way because, first of all, let's be frank, most of them probably haven't even ever encountered an autistic person. Most of them probably don't even know what autism is. And even if they do know what autism is, they know an extreme example of autism where a person can't even talk. They don't know what social inabilities are. That doesn't process in their head. They just, in their mind, they would think, oh, this is just a dumb student or this is just a dumb kid, which is obviously not true. Yeah. And I recognize those facts. As someone with autism. You don't want to talk to your teacher about it because they could either be making fun of you or they do not understand the situation. Exactly. Or as someone who wants to talk to a teacher about some kind of inappropriate behavior the autistic person has done, because obviously if they're reacting that kind of way, you don't want them to react that kind of way, and second, you don't want the kind of justice in quotation marks that the teachers are going to give him or the adults are going to give him. It's an extremely complicated world. I'm going to be real with you. There's no black and white. There's no clear answer here. The takeaways from this are: one, the bullying is wrong. It's just wrong. It's just plain out wrong. It's just wrong. Those things were disgusting. Yeah. The second takeaway here is the appropriate response is much more complicated than we initially believed it was. First of all, we have to give people who have autism, we have to treat them with different mind spec, not because we want to treat them any differently or not because we don't think of them as equal, but because we need to interact with them in a way where they are understanding what we're trying to say.
Because they don't understand interaction the way someone who's a neurotypical would understand them.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, some of these comments don't make sense to me because some of the justifications were like they were saying, why does he deserve separate treatment? It's just a normal kind of disorder. Lots of kids don't know how to speak to people appropriately. People have social anxiety. They don't know how to speak to people. Why should we treat them any differently? And I think what we need to recognize here that it is a valid mental health illness to have. Yeah. These are real things. These are not things made up. Exactly. There's a difference between being introverted, there's a difference between having social anxiety, and there's a difference between having autism. Those are two completely separate and valid, both things are valid,
Exactly.
experiences.
Yeah.
But you can't be an introvert and say, oh, I have autism too, I'm like on the spectrum, I'm just really low on the spectrum. That's not accurate, and that's slightly inflammatory as well.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to compare your experience with the experience of a person who's been constantly bullied for it.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. It is really complicated. And it's complicated because we're not adults, and one, we don't have all the resources available.
Yeah.
Is it appropriate for someone like us to go to that student and be like, you shouldn't be in this school then? If you're going to talk to us like that, you should go to one of those autistic schools. Is it appropriate to talk to someone like that? Is it appropriate to talk to their parents like that? Do you have to tell their parents it is not appropriate? Is it appropriate for a teacher to go to a parent of a student and say, your son should not be in this school, or your daughter should not be in this school, he should be in a special autistic school? Is it appropriate? I mean,
well, we don't really have that many
we
resources
don't.
in the
We
first
don't.
place.
First
In the first place, we already don't have that many options for schools that are specifically for autistic children.
And second of all, they aren't mental health experts. Is it their place
Exactly.
to say that
Who
they can't function?
if they can't function, or who deserves to be
who
in the
deserves-
mainstream education system?
And we're not saying that specially designed schools for autism aren't a good thing. They are a good
They
thing.
are.
They are a good thing. But if one person is in a mainstream education system, it's extremely complicated to tell them to go to a specialized education system.
Yeah. They might might even have more difficulty adjusting to a different education system. Maybe they want to stay in the mainstream education system. It should be more about helping them transition into a mainstream education system, so that they can then transition into the mainstream workforce, so that they don't have to be limited by having autism.
And of course, I think a valid criticism of the education system all over the world is that it adheres only to the neurotypical mindset.
Yeah.
So every single private education system or government education system adheres to the neurotypical mindset of what is appropriate for education.
So maybe we need a difference in the mainstream education rather than removing them from that setting.
Maybe we need a system that has multiple different classes that adheres to different type of people, not based on their educational achievement, not based on what kind of A's they're getting or what kind of anything that they're getting, what their SAT score is, based more on what. Bringing in, first of all, we need to bring in mental health professionals everywhere. Every single school should have at least one mental health professional who can observe the students in a consensual way, and that if they, under their observation, they can give a diagnosis if the student needs extra help or needs a different education system. Second of all, we don't know if every single autistic child is necessarily bad at I say studies, it's literally just memorizing 2 books and trying to write it off as educational studies. It's memorizing 2 books, but anyway, getting good grades and being a smart student, quote unquote. We don't know if they're those things. Maybe they are built for those things. Maybe their entire mindset is built for memorizing things. Maybe they can't talk to someone, but maybe they can memorize things in a flash. So are those people more appropriate for this system, or should they be put in a autistic school system because they aren't reacting like normal kids? They don't know how to socially interact with other kids. So we need to address this, second of all. And then this is a big criticism for schools in general. The way they would treat the kid who is getting good grades and the way they would treat the kid who is getting bad grades is so different.
It is completely different.
Oh, worlds apart. They get the good grades, they're like, oh, he doesn't have a mental illness. Oh, it's just he's really gifted. Isko to kuch bhi nahi hai. He's just a little bit shy. The kid over there, oh, he's dumb, he's just stupid, he must have the mental illness. The kid is getting good grades.
The education system is built with biases, especially on grades. Like the child who gets the good grade will be seated in the front seat, will be called upon during class. The one at the back will, if someone with bad grades doesn't do their homework, the teacher will automatically assume that they are lazy, automatically assume that they're not paying attention in class. If a child who usually gets good grades doesn't do the homework, they'll think, oh, they must have been overloaded. Oh, they probably couldn't do it, so it's okay. We can make a concession, and that's wrong. They should be treated. Everyone should be treated fairly. It's not just that you don't give attention to students. Like if a child is diagnosed with autism and you say they should be removed, this kind of treatment goes to people who aren't maybe that good at a certain subject.
And I mean, when we're talking about that, we also need to recognize that this isn't just a criticism of the Pakistani education system. This is a criticism world around every single education system. This is a problem in the entire education system that people much more qualified and much smarter than us have brought up countless times, but we haven't thought of an appropriate solution to it.
Exactly.
And
it needs to be adapted according to the changes in society, according to the awareness that is being brought, both in mental health and just otherwise in general.
And second, we are in extremely privileged places. We are talking about private education systems which have private teachers and private mental health counselors who can talk to you whenever you want and can do whatever you want. We aren't even talking about the students who don't have the financial resources to do any of those things yet. What are they supposed to do? Are they just going to be labeled dumb or weird
all their life and put down when maybe they could be really great at something?
I mean, it's complicated, and honestly, there's no black and white answer here, and there honestly isn't something that we can do that's going to fix everything. Of course, we can take steps that's going to help people generally, but there's nothing really we can do that's going to fix everything. It's going to take a lot of time. And the first step in fixing these problems is recognizing these problems. Awareness of these problems. And second time, I think it's important for schools to take some responsibility. They need to take some responsibility. They need to say, okay, we haven't recognized. We're talking about, these kids who are getting good grades. We don't talk about them. We don't give them extra classes. We don't give them extra mental health counseling. We don't do anything for them. But the kids who are getting bad grades, because they are getting bad grades, we're automatically assuming they must have house issues. Oh, they must have something going on. Oh, they must have mental health issues. We automatically assume those things, and the schools
need to stop making assumptions.
Everywhere schools need to take that responsibility. Schools also need to take the responsibility. It's important for them not to make judgment. This student is just not going to work in our school. It's a school's responsibility to bring in a mental health professional. That mental health professional to give their professional advice. They will give you the advice which is most appropriate. You as a principal or you as a vice principal or the dean or whatever position whoever holds in whatever school in any place in any country, it is not your place unless you are qualified to tell a student
you are not okay. Professional. It's your responsibility to hire the appropriate professional.
Appropriate professional, get that professional's advice. If you are seeing constantly, and also there's a very it's important to recognize that the approaches to all of these things is complicated. If you are seeing let's say a student is like really, really good at their studies, but you as a principal or you as a teacher don't see them hanging out with anyone, don't see them talking to anyone, don't see them really interacting with anyone, there are a couple of different things you can do as a principal. There are a couple of different things you can do as a teacher. There are a couple of different things we can do as students. First of all, as students, if we're seeing someone sitting alone, first of all, I think you should go and talk to them. I don't know what the thing of not talking to someone who's just sitting alone and go and talk.
Just start a small conversation. See if you have something in common.
Just start talking to them.
Exactly.
I mean, I remember, me and Gule, we used to sit in the art room in our school. And people who didn't talk to anyone just showed up there. And we just started talking.
Exactly.
Because they didn't have anywhere else to go. And we just kept sitting over there. And they just started talking to us. My point here is, if you're seeing someone alone as a student, and again, it isn't your responsibility necessarily to be friends with someone. You don't have to be friends with someone. You aren't doing something wrong by not being friends with someone. It would be wrong if you're ignoring someone if they ask you a question or say hi or something. But just not pursuing a friendship isn't a wrong thing. I'm just saying it's a positive thing. If you or any group of friends goes up to a person and tries to hang out with them, anything. What's the teacher's responsibility in all this? A teacher needs to be Gule. Give me some teacher stuff.
A teacher can also go and talk to a student. I remember when I came in 4th grade, I didn't really interact with the kids that much because I was really shy, and my class teacher came to me and sat with me in break because I was eating lunch alone. And I think that can help, and teachers should maybe they should have the conversation with the kid, and maybe even ask them if they want to play with one of the other kids, or maybe even talk to the parents and ask them, maybe the child is having trouble adjusting. And then they should take the appropriate steps following that.
I think teachers have a role to play in all of this. I think, unfortunately, a lot of our teachers don't recognize mental health issues. A lot of teachers in Pakistan, a lot of teachers in places where mental health isn't recognized a lot of these teachers don't recognize mental health problems. A lot of these teachers don't I think they'll recognize a shy student and they'll recognize that a student is alone and that maybe we should try to help them. but they won't recognize that there's a mental health problem
Exactly.
behind that
Yeah.
shyness. They'll just take that as a personality of the kid.
Yeah.
Is it a place of that teacher to put a label on of mental health on that student though, even for them interacted with them and they're just shy?
No, I don't think so. I don't think labeling without any sort of proof or at least some sort of interaction is right. And I also don't think any like labeling without talking to the child themselves is appropriate. They should talk to the child. They should, if they think that the child does have a mental health problem, they should bring it up with the admin. They should bring it up with the admin so that they can call in the professionals so that the child can receive a proper diagnosis, because that's how they will get help. Just labeling them and maybe even helping them after, if you think it's still wrong because they're not a professional, they might label them wrong. And if that label, like if a child does not understand why they're different, and they can have the diagnosis of autism to help them understand themselves, then it's better if the teacher brings that up so that they can get that proper diagnosis.
I mean, it's an interesting conversation also, because when we're talking about diagnosis, period, about anything autism, reading disabilities, social disabilities, any kind of disability or mental health problem, is it appropriate for a student to know? Is a student's confidence, is a student's ability to do something going to be diminished because they know they're dyslexic? For example, let's say a student at a very young age is told, "Oh, you're just dyslexic. You can't do this." Is that going to affect their ability? Is that going to affect how much they try to do something?
Well, I don't think there's actually like one answer for this, because there's a lot of controversy even among psychologists about if they should tell a diagnosis or not. Like sometimes someone has said to me, like, I don't think it would be good to let someone know that they have this certain diagnosis, because yes, sometimes it'll be a label. It will be a label regardless. When you diagnose someone, they will see themselves as, I'm the kid with autism, or I'm the kid who has dyslexia, of course. And sometimes that can help in the sense that it helps them understand. You tell them the symptoms and they can understand why they are the way they are, because it's also really difficult, even as a neurotypical, it's difficult to know who you are and why you act in a certain way. So someone with autism would not understand why they feel so different and isolated from other students or other people. So it might help them understand, like, okay, this helps me understand how my brain works, and maybe and then they can get like the appropriate help that they need to help them adjust to the world.
I think that's a really appropriate conversation to have, because anyone who feels like they're different growing up, I think for them it's important to know what the answer is.
Exactly.
I think
they
for
will
them,
constantly think why, and then if they don't get the answers soon enough, they're just gonna start thinking along the lines of, there's something wrong with me, and that's not something that anyone should think.
This is relevant not only for autism as well.
Yeah.
This is relevant for autism, where someone thinks differently and they think all their life, why am I thinking differently? Why can't I think like these other people? Exactly. I think in that case, getting a mental health or getting a diagnosis can be helpful. Because you know what is wrong, and you know that how you can fix it and how you can address it.
Exactly.
And another thing that is, I think, relevant and that someone should know is gender dysphoria. I think a mental health professional, or you just as yourself, can say, I'm feeling gender dysphoria. I don't feel comfortable with how I look in the mirror. You're having body dysmorphia as well. I don't feel comfortable how I look in the mirror. I don't feel comfortable with the gender that has been assigned to me, and I feel more comfortable in the opposite gender, or I feel comfortable in a non-binary gender as well. I think those things are important as well. As anyone, you'd be confused what's going on.
Exactly. You'd wonder, like, why does nobody else think this way? Why am I thinking this way? Is there something wrong? So, of course, I think in those cases it would be appropriate to know what's the answer to the why, instead of constantly wondering.
I mean, another thing when it comes to these things are, a lot of this stuff is really complicated. There isn't one answer for everyone. Everyone functions differently. Even under autism, all of these things function differently. These people as human beings function differently, and all of them need and want separate things, and that's something we need to differentiate as well. Needing and wanting something are two separate things. They might want to know that what their diagnosis is. They might want to know, maybe someone is feeling very, very, very upset, and to feel better, they want to know that they have they need to know that they have depression, or they need to know that they have an extreme form of depression or sadness, to know that it's a point where I need to step in. I need to step in. those people might need to know, okay, this isn't just not me normally being sad. This is depression,
Yeah.
and I need to either see someone or take meds or whatever is appropriate.
Yeah.
And when it comes to meds and autism, me and Gula didn't speak about that a lot.
Yeah.
It's really complicated.
Because there are no specific meds just for autism. There are just medications that you can take to help alleviate symptoms of autism. Like there are antidepressants that you can take as a result of having autism and feeling isolated. There are meds for anxiety that comes with autism. There are meds that you mentioned this, but there are also meds that you need to avoid, and there are certain substances that some people with autism need to go on certain diets because they need to avoid chemicals inside food.
Not vaccines.
Not vaccines.
Oh, the vaccine thing annoys me so much.
That's just completely false.
It annoys me so much.
There's no link.
And the same people who blame autism on vaccines, they're gonna go get the coronavirus vaccine. They don't see it. They don't see the problem then when it's saving their life.
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
Absolute rubbish, and that's disrespectful to autistic people as well. That your mom got you the vaccine.
That's just ridiculous.
Ridiculous and disrespectful, and based on no science.
Exactly.
You're just speaking and you know
from like
nothing.
thin air. You're getting the facts from thin air.
Thin air. You read a Facebook post in 2015 by white Facebook mom Karen. Karen wrote, "I like Jesus and I like vaccine and I don't like vaccines. They cause autism." And you're like,
"Yep,
these
facts.
are the facts.
Yep.
Facts. Hello,
yeah.
Facts. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and we want to say in these kind of situations, okay, we need to, as a society and as a people, be more sympathetic. We need to understand that people with autism go through a lot.
Yeah.
They're going to go through a lot in their entire life.
Exactly.
And we need to recognize that. And the point of, I'm going to react really, really badly to this person, and this person deserves for me to say these horrible things to him. I don't care if he has autism. You're not recognizing what that person will ever go through in their life. Recognizing that they say something offensive to you.
Yeah.
You're not recognizing that what they had to get through to the point to be able to speak. Yeah. You're not even recognizing I'm not talking about the person involved directly. I'm just talking about in general. You don't know how many years of therapy it took an autistic person just to learn how to start speaking, and they learned just now how to start speaking. And
this is the backlash that they get. They could proceed.
They literally have no idea.
Yeah.
They just learned how to speak.
Exactly.
They
still need to learn what effects their language has.
I mean, it's ridiculous to me, and it's ridiculous to me that when you are brought up these facts, you still try to defend yourself.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. I think and then I think a very popular thing to do today, which I can recognize has some basis, is trying to make your trauma or make your mental health issue the most relevant mental health issue.
Yeah.
So saying you have autism, I have depression. You're not valid. I'm valid. I don't know what you're going through. I'm going through something harder. What I'm not trying to say that either of those experiences aren't valid. Yeah. They are both valid. It's not a competition.
Exactly.
You don't need to make
it's not like, I suffer more in my life.
It's not a competition. And it's something any one of us can get into.
Yeah.
That's not about being a bad person or saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That's you feeling like, why is this person getting the recognition of having a hard life? And I've gone through so many terrible things in my life, and I'm not getting any recognition. And this person feels like I've had the easiest life ever. Yeah. And that in our minds, to validate our experiences, we have to talk about them in a way where we're invalidating another person's experiences. Both of those experiences are valid, and there's no comparison of, he has a harder life, this person has a harder life, this person has an okay life. You have to treat their experiences.
Everyone goes through something in their life, and everyone will react to it differently. Something that seems minor to you might be really big for someone else. You don't know what they've gone through. Invalidating someone else's experiences is not the answer, because you just can't. You haven't been through, you didn't live through those experiences. How can you say that they shouldn't be upset about this or they should be less upset about this?
I mean, ending out, I just want to repeat what I said in the beginning, that we as a people need to be more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Point blank period, we need to be more sympathetic. Sympathetic towards everyone.
Yeah.
Even if someone has said the wrong thing, we still need to be sympathetic. We need to recognize that people can change, people can learn, and people can grow.
Exactly.
People can change their mind. Maybe someone said something horrible, absolutely disgusting 10 years ago, and they recognize those facts,
and they've
changed. I'm not saying that it's everyone's place to accept someone's apology.
Yeah.
You can reject someone's apology. If you are changing as a person, you need to also accept the fact that some people are
Might
just
not,
not gonna accept your apology.
You need to change because you realized you did something wrong and you do not want to repeat that mistake. It should not be, I want them to accept that I am sorry.
Like I said sorry, why aren't they accepting my apology? They're just being rude. No.
That's not the main aim. The aim is that you do not repeat that mistake because you realize that you did something wrong.
Even like let's say you were a bully and you changed your ways and you were a bully because you were part of it. You were being a toxic person and you're part of a toxic friend group who were saying certain things. You need to recognize, first of all, that person owes you the person you bullied owes you no obligation to forgive you.
Exactly.
Even if you say sorry and that person is like, I don't forgive you, I'm never going to forgive you.
Your resolve should be, I changed, I apologize, they didn't accept it, that's their experience. And then you just move on and you just learn from your mistake.
Learn from your mistakes and also do action. Saying sorry is the first step, and apologizing is the first step.
And then
but also take actions that reflect that you've changed as a person.
Exactly.
Are you supporting people in your life? Are you supporting the people in your life? Are you supporting people who are different? Are you going up to the students who act differently? What are you saying to them? Yeah. What are your friends saying to them? Check your friends. A lot of people don't do this.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't check their friends. Their friends
Call out your friends if they make a horrible joke.
Their friends can say anything. Exactly. They won't say nothing. Yeah. They'll be quiet. They'll be like, oh my God, it was just a joke. I don't know nothing. I thought everything
you
was
are
cool.
complicit. Even if you weren't the bully directly and you were friends with someone and you knew that they were bullying someone, you heard their jokes and you knew that it was wrong, and you didn't call them out, you are complicit. You were also wrong.
If you've told someone, I understand you're part of friend groups where you aren't even cognizant of the fact that you're being this toxic. But if you have a different friend group or you have a different number of friends who are telling you this is changing you into a person that is not you, you are that person. I'm going to retract my statement there. You are still that person. That person is still you. You are still saying those horrible things.
Yeah.
I think part of apologizing is not saying I'm not that person. It is a valid apology is not separating you from that person. You are that person.
Yeah.
The bully inside you is you. That is a part of your personality.
Yeah.
But there's also a part of your personality that can grow, that can change, and that can be kind to other people.
Exactly.
And that's a valid experience.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be, I have changed myself, I have changed as a human being. Mm-hmm. I know how long we're talking. Listen, I know how long. Wow, me and Gule were like 30 minutes.
30 minutes is more than enough. How are we going to speak for 30 minutes?
We're editing it and it's past the 1 hour and 10 minute mark. We're going to be editing this for the next
5 hours.
5 hours?
5 hours. Kasi's just going to stay here.
Also, we don't know how to edit.
Yeah, that too. We have to
Either of us don't know how to edit. We're using this app.
And I'm still trying to figure it out.
Okay, listen, they're like weird wavy lines whenever we talk.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's all we know.
That's all we know, and then we're going to wing it from there.
Yes.
Oh my God, Gule, imagine if we've been talking this whole time and this isn't recording.
That would be so... I would literally start crying now.
Gule, it just isn't recording.
It is recording.
Is it?
Yeah, look at the green.
I would die.
Green.
I would die.
I will probably delete the recording. That's a separate issue where I will just Command Z this whole thing.
Gule, don't do
this whole hour
Gule,
is going to go flying.
It's over an hour. It's like an hour, 10 minutes.
An hour and 10 minutes.
Okay, we're going to end. Both of us are going to end now because we'll just keep going.
We'll keep going.
We'll keep going.
Yeah.
Our takeaways from this entire thing: learn what is autism. It is our responsibility to be aware of what experiences can be. It is our responsibility
to educate
ourselves. It is not an autistic person's responsibility to educate you. It is your responsibility to educate yourself, learn yourself.
Exactly.
It's helpful if someone sends you advice and someone's like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
But if you are someone who has read this entire incident, I think it's your responsibility to, I'm not saying go through a whole research process to make a whole podcast. No. Slight jab. I'm saying, just search it up, search what the symptoms are. It's going to take like 5 minutes of your life.
Honestly.
Second takeaway from this, be more sympathetic.
Yeah.
We need to be more sympathetic with everyone. We need to especially be more sympathetic towards people who suffer mental health issues.
Exactly.
But we also need to be slightly more sympathetic towards people who are genuinely trying to change.
Yeah.
First of all, it isn't our place to accept their apology or to see what their actions are as change. It's just our responsibility
to encourage change.
Encourage change, exactly. And it's our responsibility to see friends or other people who are involving themselves in certain groups who antagonize people. It is our responsibility to tell those people, I don't think you're going down the wrong. I think you're going down the wrong path.
Exactly.
I think you're involving yourself with the wrong type of people.
Yeah.
And what they do afterwards is their choice. What they do with that information is their choice.
But you should provide that information.
Because you, as their friend, as
their friend, you're supposed to care about them. And if you care about them, then you'll see, like, if they're doing something wrong, you should call it out.
I mean, I'm not saying go and swear at them, be like, I don't know who you hang out with, I'm going to beat the hell out. I'm just saying, just you're their friend. I think you have the right to say, I don't think what you did here was correct. Was correct in a nice way. I'm not saying go and like
pick fights. I mean, no.
Just go. I don't think what you did here was correct, and I think you should if you were acting rude, you would either apologize to this person. You should act in a different way. Whatever you think is appropriate, and then you can have a civil conversation about it with each other.
Yeah.
Gula, do you want to give any ending comments? I kind of gave my 2 cents about it.
No, I think that about covers everything. I hope this cleared up a few things about autism for you guys. I hope you guys are more clear about the disorder and the symptoms, and I hope you guys are more well equipped to handle a situation where you might be with an autistic individual, how to be more sensitive towards them and sympathize more with them. And if you think that you identify with any of these symptoms, I hope it helped you understand yourself better. I think that's it, and we'll see you guys next week for the next episode.